Hi, I'm Mary Jo. I have been a nurse for 51 years. I've lost over 100 pounds as a postmenopausal woman and am more excited about the fact I have reversed all chronic disease in my life. I require no medications. I am fit, I am having fun, and I am energetic. In fact, a lot of people, half my age and less, say, "Oh, I just wish I could have your energy." Now, isn't that interesting? Now, why don't they? They're younger than me. They should be able to metabolize anything. Well, I wondered if it would be appropriate to discuss a couple of concepts I've learned about while reading plant based doctors and looking at plant based nutrition. So, here are the terms: slow food, fast food, caloric rush. Slow food is eating foods that the macronutrient, so for carbohydrate, let's say glucose; for protein, let's say amino acids; for fats, let's say fatty acids, are absorbed very slowly into the bloodstream so that you get a corresponding low physiologic secretion of insulin, IGF-1, and also are able to place into operation different chemicals and situations and hormones that diminish your appetite. Now, what is fast food? Is it McDonald's? Yes, but it's more than that. Fast foods are those macronutrients that rush into the bloodstream, causing a seriously increased excessive amount of insulin, IGF-1, and instead of diminishing appetite, chemicals that increase appetite and say eat more. Goodness gracious. This causes the third term, a caloric rush. So when a caloric rush happens, then your hormones are out of whack, your appetite is out of whack. Why is this? What differentiates a hamburger from a legume? What differentiates a blueberry from a cube of sugar? What differentiates olive oil from nuts and seeds? And I think the answer is more simplistic than I realized. It's fiber. Any food product that is aligned with fiber is absorbed much more slowly into the bloodstream so that there is not this confusion, and these elements are enabled to be utilized for energy, and you feel the energy, you feel powerful, you feel great, you feel excited about life, and for the ability of replicating and healing and creating new proteins to replace worn out cells. And this also is an important ability to continued health in this world. So, it reminds me of a story that happened some years ago. A young gentleman came to visit me in my office who had questions about the class he was taking from me. Now, I had mentioned some information about nutrition, and I had not been super specific about some of the information, and he came and proudly told me he was now on a keto diet, he felt great, and he would never change. I said to him, "Well, I'm glad you are feeling well, but I wondered if he could be losing out on some important nutrients for a sustainable diet, particularly in terms of carbohydrates." And he said, sugar is sugar no matter what, whether it's a blueberry or a cube of sugar, your body doesn't know the difference. I did not wish to argue with the young gentleman, and I am not suggesting to anybody that a keto diet is a good idea. I do not think that it is. But I got to pondering some of our further discussion, and I was not going to argue with him. I was going to let him make up his own mind. But I could give him resources and references if he wanted further thought. But at one point, he said to me, well, let's say I eat oatmeal and blueberries for breakfast. I'm going to be starving and shaky an hour later. Now, that seems a very contrary to plant based eating style and what its long term effect should be in terms of satiety. And I had to think about that for a while. And of course, now I totally get it. So, why is a sugar cube not like a blueberry? Because of fiber. Sugar in a sugar cube right into the bloodstream. Glucose from a berry, slow absorption into the bloodstream with many micronutrients, which, for one thing, are seriously associated with easy flow of blood and increased nitric oxide production by the endothelium of arteries, increased cognitive development. So blueberries sound like a really good idea. So what was the gentleman's problem? Well, it simply was that when he ate perhaps grains, when he ate fruit, he felt like he was eating processed food. He felt like I would feel if I was eating processed food. How is that possible? Well, remember, he's eating a very high saturated fat diet. And saturated fat formulates a myelolipid sheath around muscle cells, deforming the insulin lock and preventing the use of glucose by this cell. Of course, that's going to make him feel shaky and hungry. It's like his cell's not getting adequate glucose for energy, and it's getting a little upset with him. But this tide could be turned, but it would take some time if he chose to do it on his part, because he would need to eat a more plant-based diet and get rid of all those fats so that that myelolipid sheath would dissolve, and then the insulin lock would work well again. And having food like oatmeal and blueberries would not cause a problem. I mean, I totally get where he was coming from on this, because when I started eating plant-based, that happened to me. And then I realized why it was happening. It was not because of the high fiber food I was eating. It was because from previous diet, the insulin lock of my cells was distorted. But time took care of the situation, and there are so many foods that I love to eat and imbibe in, and I love the beauty of all the beautiful fruit and vegetables out there. So it's all about the fiber. So when you eat, if you ingest processed food, if you ingest animal products, if you ingest oils, none of this has any fiber in it and is really diminished, minimal to no micronutrients available, which means that you're going to rapidly absorb the glucose, the amino acids, and the fatty acids. Now, when you get a rapid amino acid load in your body outside of the problems it causes with excessive elevation of IGF-1, there is also the problem that it's a heavy acidic load. And to alkalize the bloodstream, your body can take calcium and magnesium from bones and teeth to make it less acidic. This is not a good long-term strategy for bone health. Okay, fatty acids. So if you enjoy something like olive oil, it's already like pre-digested. It's like from 3 minutes to your lips to your hips. And there are 14% saturated fat in olive oil. Now, you could eat nuts and seeds. What's the difference between the fatty acids in nuts and seeds and olive oil? Well, in nuts and seeds, they're bound, of course, in fiber. In olive oil, they're not. In nuts and seeds, there's a plethora of micronutrients available. In olive oil, they're not. There is a definitely saturated fat content in most nuts with the exception of walnuts. Now, if that's a concern, you could still have plenty of seeds and some walnuts without that fear. On the other hand, if you imbibe in food that has just a small amount of bound to fiber saturated fat, the body can utilize that slow absorption of saturated fat for immediate energy production rather than fat storage. It's really interesting how the body can do these things. A high onslaught of saturated fat overwhelmed, you just get fatter, you get visceral fat, you get chronic disease, you get inflammation. Now here's another point. Fiber is extraordinarily important to the human health, but here's another thought, micronutrients. So if you utilize fast food sources for caloric content, then your body, your cells, they're going to grab that stuff when they can, and they're going to do their utmost to make energy out of it. Now, the energy production is fraught with concern and not very efficient, so you're going to feel sluggish. But you can go out and play basketball. You can do some things with your life, right? Because you have enough energy for that. You will keep breathing. But what's the problem? Well, the mitochondria of the cells are the little powerhouses that create energy, and they will take those macronutrients to create energy. But without the micronutrients, the end result is a large quantity of free radical byproducts. Now, these free radicals in and of themselves are not bad. In fact, just a small number of free radicals from normal metabolism can actually help the cell out because they're like little garbage disposals. I think of little Pac-Mans, and they eat up toxins and funky things that are in the cell, which makes them protective. But when you have an onslaught in this excessive production of free radicals, they're a little unstable and confused, and they will burst out of the cells, and they will go ravage other parts of your body. Yes, systemic inflammation and chronic disease becomes your companion. Oh, yuck. No, thank you very much. So, what's the difference between fast and slow food outside of where you might purchase it? It is how the food is digested and absorbed into the bloodstream. Food that has bound with fiber, some water, will be absorbed much more slowly, providing you a constant stream for an avenue for energy resources. With these foods in particular, you're getting micronutrients, so you're going to diminish free radical production as well. Yes, when you don't get that caloric rush, you just feel so much better. You feel very enabled to go for periods of time between meals and have fun, do whatever you want to do. That is for absolute sure. I thought that I would mention a few exceedingly good slow foods. And now, as far as carbohydrates are concerned, I don't think too many people are concerned. Fruits and vegetables are the top of my food pyramid. Another thought is there are such things as intact grains, but you don't want white flour in your products. You want intact whole grains in products that you choose to imbibe in. Dr. Greger provided a helpful way of ascertaining if a food product is high fiber, in particularly thinking about bread products. And that is, for every 5 carbohydrates, there should be at least 1 fiber. And so if you have like 25 carbs in a serving size, and you have 5 fibers in that serving size, that means 5 goes in 25 5 times. That means you have the appropriate quantity of fiber in that product to call it high fiber. And high fiber is where it is, and that's what provides health in the way it's metabolized and digested. Okay, people are so worried about protein, and I always say, well, legumes is a great place to go for protein, but some people do have a little problem with the digestibility of legumes. If you are one of those people and you are trying to go to a plant-based diet, My suggestion is to start very slow and increase very slowly till you are imbibing in about a half cup of beans per 24 hours. Having some beans for all three meals or some beans just for lunch and dinner is always a good idea. But if all your body can handle is a teaspoon of beans twice a day, start with that. That shouldn't cause you any problems. And don't use Beano. Beano prevents the microbiome, the bacteria you're developing in your gut. It prevents them from interacting with the legumes to produce butyrate, which is highly anti-inflammatory. In fact, when you think about this process, it's very interesting because a legume is mostly protein and carbohydrate. Now, because of the resistant starch, a great deal of those calories are resistant starch, and you're never going to absorb them because you cannot absorb resistant starch. And some of the other carbohydrate in that bean is used by the good bacteria in your gut. Once you allow them to proliferate, it will cause them to take this carbohydrate and make a fatty acid out of it called butyrate. And some of that butyrate is absorbed into the body. Most of the butyrate's in the colon and protects from colon cancer. That which is absorbed into the body is absorbed as an anti-inflammatory molecule to keep you healthy rather than put fat on your waistline. My goodness, when you think about how food works, isn't it just a miracle? So there you have it. You would like, hopefully, to avoid fast food because it seems like it leaves you, it can give you a dopamine rush and then it leaves you. It's kind of like a momentary high and then you don't feel very good at all. And you're sluggish and you're tired. Yuck! Who needs it? You want foods with fiber, micronutrients that give you a zest for living. So I hope from this conversation you found something that is good for and can help you in your journey of health. Because after all, this is all about you. And with great love and appreciation in my heart, I thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye from Nurse Mary Jo.